Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. We're looking at some injury updates, some roster movement, a couple pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Blues, the Kings, the Bruins, and a couple of other teams. We'll listen to all this coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, do not forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers and we're trying to hit 675 by the March 6th trade deadline, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. Also don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. If you haven't already, check out the Buy Me a Coffee page I made. If you can and it's within your means, make a donation on it. It really does help out the channel and helps me keep things running here. And on top of that, stay tuned for our March 6th trade deadline live stream at 11:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll be doing a live stream during the trade deadline, talking about all the moves that happen on trade deadline day. So definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that. But in today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. This is a very interesting one. There's been no signings from our past couple of days, so we'll start off as we usually do by talking about some injury updates from our past couple of days. So first, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen returned to practice for the Sabres recently and may be ready to go for the Buffalo Sabres next game when they get back from the Olympic break. So that'll be really good. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has missed a couple of games leading into the Olympic break and missed the Olympics because of the injuries. So it doesn't look like it was anything too serious. It looks like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is nearing a return, which will be a big boost there for the Buffalo Sabres. Well, Tage Thompson left the semi game for the United States with undisclosed injury, but should play in the gold medal game. So that's a bad blow. He didn't play at all in the third period. It's not great news there for Tage Thompson. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. Hopefully he is ready to go for the gold medal game on Sunday tomorrow, but still very interesting out there that Thompson didn't play at all in the third period for the States in the semifinal game. Now Matt Rimpey recently underwent a thumb procedure and has been placed in injury reserve. He's been out due to injury a ton of times this year, so not great news there, and he's going to miss at least the next little bit. He might be able to get back right after the Olympic break, but still not overly great news there for the Rangers. Sidney Crosby missed the semifinal game for Canada and is questionable for the gold medal game. It sounds like he is more likely to play the gold medal game than not, but still, it's a very bad blow there for the Canadians that they didn't have Crosby in yesterday's semifinal game, and we'll see if he's going to be good to go for tomorrow's gold medal game, but still, that injury is really up in the air and it could be still very costly for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Dylan Holloway is expected to return to game action when the Blues are back from the Olympic break after he missed 8 games leading up to the break with a lower body injury, so that's really good news there. It sounds like Holloway is nearing a return for the St. Louis Blues. Chytil suffered a facial fracture in practice and is out indefinitely. This dude just can't catch a break. I'm not sure if he will see Chytil again this season, but another lost season almost basically due to injuries for Chytil. Like, I hope he's able to recover from this and get back into game action, but that's just another bad blow for Chytil. Connor McMichael, who has been out 3 weeks with undisclosed injury, will be activated and return to game action when the Caps are back from their Olympic break. And Pionka's missed over a month with a lower body injury, might travel with the Jets when they get back from the Olympic break. So that could be a big boost there for the Jets and the Caps, for the Caps to get their solid 2-3 center back into the lineup, and for the Jets to get one of their top 4 defensemen back. So really good news there, but it does sound like some players are getting healthier as we're near the return from the Olympic break. So very good news there. Going over to some recalls from reassignments, not a whole bunch here. We saw Kyrou, and Eric Portillo be called up by Los Angeles and Matt Murray recalled by Nashville. Well, some of the players who were recently called up over the past couple of days, like we talked about in our last video, have been sent down, including DiPietro in Boston, Ratzlaff to the ECHL in Buffalo, Shannon Dries in Detroit, Kachuk and Gleason in Minnesota, Bonk, MacDonald, Bjornsson in Philly, and Giroux and Villeneuve in Toronto have all been reassigned to their AHL affiliates. So nothing too surprising there. Most of those guys were just called up a couple of days ago to get some practicing time with the NHL clubs and have now been reassigned. Well, interesting note there that Kirsanov, Portillo, and Murray have all been recalled by the Los Angeles Kings and the Nashville Predators. So very interesting note there. One quick waiver update, and that is with Gibson and MacDonald. In our last video, we talked about how Gibson and MacDonald were on waivers and we weren't sure about the outcome. However, I thought that given the fact Gibson was just signing a contract and MacDonald was coming off of injury reserve, it would be very likely that both these guys wound up clearing, and that is the case. Both wound up clearing. So Gibson's going to go to the AHL affiliates for the Caps and MacDonald to the AHL affiliates for the Avs. We shall see what happens next for those two guys, but not too surprising there. I didn't think either one was going to get claimed off of waivers, so not too surprising there. A couple of small, quick pieces of news here. First, Ollie Lykesell, who's playing with the Ottawa Senators right now, and Sebastian Aho, who's under contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is defenseman Sebastian Aho, not forward Sebastian Aho, who plays with Carolina, are both linked to going overseas. It sounds like maybe after this year, Lykesell could go over to the Swiss League. It sounds like Aho could go over to the SHL. So both these guys are fringe NHL players. I think Aho's basically spent the entire season at the AHL level. Lykesell's been a call-up option, spent some games at the NHL level, spent some games at the AHL level. So it seems like with both these guys not being legit NHLers, that they might go overseas to look for opportunities elsewhere after the season. So definitely keep your eye on Lykesell and Aho when their two-team seasons end, as there's a very likely possibility instead of re-upping with their teams or hitting free agency, they could go overseas. So very interesting note there. And just a couple of quick extension updates. First, when it comes to Bobby McMann, David Pagnotta was talking about McMann, and he says that extension talks right now are not going anywhere with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, there has been a lot of speculation about a McMann trade, but there also has been some speculation early on in the season about the Leafs wanting to extend McMann because he's a really solid third liner. He can play on the second line if need be. He's having a career season goal-wise. So there's a lot of talk that McMann, if they could sign him, they would probably try and keep him. But it seems like extension talks aren't going very far. With the way he's playing right now, I think McMahon's probably going to try and push like a $5 million deal. And with the way he is in the Leafs lineup, I think the Leafs would probably want something closer to like between 3 and 4. So this is just my speculation. I don't know exactly what the terms are for the deals, but it does sound like McMann and Toronto are far apart on a deal. And unless something gets narrowed in the very near future, I still think it's very likely that the Leafs, instead of trying to sign him, wind up moving him in the next 2 weeks. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And then when it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins, apparently, according to Pagnotta, before the season gets back underway next Thursday, according to his sources, the Penguins and Evgeny Malkin are going to sit down and have contract talks. Now, before the season started, it sounded like Pittsburgh was basically done with Malkin after this year. They weren't going to bring him back, and this was potentially going to be Malkin's last season. But Malkin's been brilliant this year. He's having some sort of a career resurgence. He is in the final year of his deal. There's a possibility he could get traded, but the Penguins are in a playoff spot, so I highly doubt that. And now there's some talk about potentially an extension. I don't think it'd be a long extension because Malkin is getting up there in age. I would think it probably, if there was an extension, to be like maybe like a 1 to 2 year deal at around the like $5 to $6 million mark. Like that would be my guess at this point. But given how well he's fit in with the Pittsburgh Penguins, if they feel like he can produce really well for the next 2, maybe even 3 years, like why wouldn't you sign him? He's a really good player. So I'm not going to say it's a guarantee Malkin gets signed. There's still a potentiality he retires. There's still a potentiality he goes overseas. There's also a potentiality he sends with another team. But it seems like he really likes playing in Pittsburgh. And I do think we will see Malkin potentially stay in Pittsburgh beyond this season. So very interesting note there, but a couple of very interesting signing updates from the past couple of days. And lastly, here going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got 4 trade rumors here to talk about. So first, we're going to look at the Boston Bruins. According to Shiwenza of The Athletic, he was recently talking about the Boston Bruins, and he mentions that the Bruins might still be open to dealing a pending UFA defenseman in Andrew Peeke. Now, the Bruins are on the fringe of making the playoffs in their second wildcard spot. There's been some talk about them adding some defensive help at some point, but there is some talk that could also try and move maybe a couple pending UFAs. Another name that was recently brought up was Victor Arvidsson, although it doesn't seem they really want to move Arvidsson given how well he's been playing with the Boston Bruins. But that's another UFA is a possibility to get dealt. But Peeke's a very interesting name. He was acquired from the Blue Jackets a couple of years ago. He's having a really good season with the Boston Bruins, so I wouldn't say it's a guarantee he gets moved. He's got this year left on his contract before he's a UFA at I think just over $2 million or something like that, and he's a really serviceable third pair defenseman. Now, he could be a really good fit with the Boston Bruins, but if the Bruins do wind up acquiring a guy like a Justin Falk or Dougie Hamilton or something like that, then maybe they try and look to flip a defenseman out as well. They could try and move him to try and improve their prospect pool or their draft capital, which I don't think would be too bad. I think they could get like a 3rd round pick, maybe something else, maybe even like a 2nd round pick for Andrew Peeke. I think they could potentially get that. So I'm not going to say it's a guarantee by any means that the Bruins move him because they are in a playoff spot. Peeke is having a really good season with Boston, but if they don't feel like they can sign him and they are looking for a defensive upgrade elsewhere anyways, I can definitely see the Bruins move Peeke to a team who really does need some third pair defensive help. So I have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Boston Bruins, as even though there is some talk about them adding, They could also look to move a guy like Andrew Peeke, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to David Pagnotta, he was talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he says that the Lightning are in the market for a right shot defenseman. Now, pure right shot defenseman, they don't have a whole bunch here. They have Crozier, who's currently injured and won't be back until the playoffs, and there's a couple of other ones. I think Raddysh is one of them, and they have another right shot defenseman on their team, but no clear-cut top pair, top four right shot defensemen who play on the right side. They have guys like Hedman, like McDonough, like Moser who play on the left side, who are left shot defensemen, but they don't have a whole bunch of right shot defensemen. So it does sound like there's a very likely possibility that Lightning will try and acquire a right shot defenseman before the trade deadline. Now, it doesn't sound like they really want to go with a guy who's a Pending UFA, so a guy like Connor Murphy or someone like that who's a Pending UFA defenseman, or even Andrew Peeke, who could help the right side, but as a Pending UFA doesn't really make a ton of sense. There's a couple of guys who have like 1 or 2 years left on their deal, like a Dougie Hamilton, like a Justin Falk, like a Rasmus Ristolainen, who do have a couple of years left on their deal, either 1 or 2, but they're not also signed for a long period of time. So I'm not sure if they would have some interest in any of those guys. A name that has come up that they could have some interest in is Braden Schneider, who's an RFA, who's going to need a new contract in the offseason, but is a really solid top 4 young right shot defenseman who could really help that team. So that could be a possible option, but it definitely seems that they are in the market for right shot defenseman, and ideally it seems like they want to try and get someone who's either signed with term or who's on the other side of things and cost controlled, who can grow with the team instead of just having someone like a rental or a guy who's only going to be there for a year or 2. So we'll have to wait and see on that. No guarantees by any means that the Bolts do pull something like this off, but with their weak right side on the defensive end, it does make a ton of sense that they would try and pull off a deal to try and get a right shot defenseman. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to David Pagnotta again, he was talking about the Los Angeles Kings, and he says that this team's in the market for a middle six forward after the Fiala injury. Now, a couple of videos ago, we talked about how Warren Foegele was a potential trade candidate for the LA Kings. They had an abundance of wingers, but since then, Kevin Fiala was injured in the Olympics, and it sounds like he's going to be out at least until the regular season ends, if not longer. So with all that in mind, it seems that they are now in the market to try and add another winger. Now, that's not to say they won't still move Warren Foegele, but they are looking for another middle six winger. They recently just acquired Panarin a couple of weeks ago, and now it seems that they want another winger. Because this team, they are on the outside looking in, but they're not overly bad. They are just a couple points out of the playoff spot. They're going to try and push for the playoffs to try and get Kopitar into the playoffs in what is his final season. So they're going to try and make any sort of additions they can to try and improve this team. It seems like they do have some interest in adding a middle six forward. I don't know if they're going to go big game hunting. Like, I know there's some talk about Elias Pettersson. If they're looking for a winger, would they go after a guy like Jordan Kyrou, or would they go after a guy like Owen Tippett or Alexi Lafreniere? Like, that's a possibility, but I'm not sure if they really want to go big game hunting. They might just try and look for someone who can fit in the middle six, maybe like a rental or something like that. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen there, and I still wouldn't be surprised if Foegele gets moved, but I do think it makes a ton of sense that now that Fiala's going to be out for the rest of the regular season, and this team is trying to make the playoffs for Andre Kopitar. It does make a ton of sense, in my opinion, that the LA Kings will be trying to acquire a middle six winger, and we'll have to wait and see if they do want to pull it off, and if it is, who they wind up pulling it off with. So I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to David Pagnotta again, he was talking about Jordan Kyrou, and he mentions that Kyrou, according to his sources, is ready for a fresh start, willing to waive his trade protection, and is open to a fresh start elsewhere. So it seems like Kyrou, even though it sounds like there was some talk about the Blues moving him, it seems like Kyrou's open to the deal as well, and for the right situation, he would waive his no movement clause. So that's very interesting note there. Kyrou is a really solid top 6 winger. He signed for a long period of time, I think like 5 or 6 more seasons at $8 million, and he's a really skilled winger who can play on the top line, who can play on the second line. Really skilled guy. Now, there's been some talk, according to Pagnotta, that do teams who are trying to acquire him in the off-season sort of loop around and try and acquire him again, such as teams like Seattle and Montreal, who have been mentioned, had some major interest in trying to acquire him in the off-season. That's possible. I've already said before, Seattle should be heavy players for Jordan Kyrou, because I think he could really help out that team and be that dynamic winger that this team has been missing. And Montreal, I think they're more interested in a center at this point in time, but imagine if they added Kyrou to a top 6 six that already has guys like Caulfield, Suzuki, Demidov on the wings. You add Kyrou, like your top six is stacked. There's also been some recent mentioning about New York Islanders. Could they have some interest in trying to add a dynamic winger like that? I'm not sure they'd have to pull it off. But yeah, if you add Kyrou to a top six that has guys like Barzal, like Horvat, you already got Chytil on the blue line, like you're improving that team a bit. And I'm sure there'd be a couple of other teams out there too who would have some major interest in Kyrou. So I personally have said I would not be one bit surprised if Kyrou gets dealt before the trade deadline. And according to David Pagnotta, it seems like Kyrou is open to a fresh start as well. So I have to wait and see on that. But I personally do think it's a possibility we could see a Kyrou deal before a trade deadline. And I hope that if Kyrou is dealt, it is to the Seattle Kraken. So we'll have to wait and see on that. No guarantees that Kyrou gets moved because he does have trade protection signed for a long period of time. But it is going to be an interesting name to keep our eye on leading up to the trade deadline. So that's all I want to talk for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does Kyrou get dealt by the Blues? Do the Bolts add a right shot defenseman? Do the Bruins move Andrew Peeke? And do the Kings add Milsix forward now that Fiala is injured? Definitely our thoughts on all of that. Plus all the news updates, injuries, signings, and all the other things that we talked about in today's video. Definitely our thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. And if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming in the very near future. I also have a blog to make news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. If you haven't already, check out my Buy Me a Coffee page if you can and it's within your means. Make a donation, it really does help with the channel. That's all I'm going to talk about in today's video. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next one. See you guys soon.